I worked in academia, which was fantastic in terms of being very interesting and being at the cutting edge of things. I could see that to really progress in academia, I would have to be willing to move geographically and often be on quite short-term contracts. And with a family, that's a really big ask. The thing that I didn't want to do is to have a second tier career where I was only taking the contracts that would work for me geographically. That just didn't feel that happy. And also the downside of academia is that it takes such a long time to find out if you've done a good job. You have to wait decades before you get that payoff. And by comparison, in technology, you can see what you've made. You can see in a really short period of time whether it's a good product or not. You get that really fast feedback. So I was at this junction in my life. The other option on the table was teaching, and I did some not voluntary. I did some enrichment teaching, where I was going into schools and doing some small group extension maths teaching. And I loved working with the children, but I discovered what all teachers tell you, that the paperwork is excruciating. And the other irony that I can never get my head around is that teaching is actually really hard with a family because you physically have to be there. There really is very little flex that even the most sympathetic head teacher can give you when fundamentally the role is about being present in front of the class. And it directly clashes with a lot of the times when my own children might be having extra needs, like exam periods, for example. And the third option was tech. I had programmed a little bit during my PhD, but I'm not a computer sciences graduate. I'm a maths graduate. It did give me that sense of power, I guess, to be able to make things to solve the problems that I saw. And my origin story had a lot to do with watching how my children interacted with technology. In particular, one of my kids was very speech delayed, and watching the impact that a well-designed piece of software would make for her was very powerful. And so I kind of got the bug through that. My original aim wasn't to get a job. My original aim was to write the software that I wish existed, which is how I ended up in mobile apps development, because I wanted that kick of actually making a product to solve an actual problem that I had. And I guess things just followed on. The longer I stayed, the more comfortable I got, the more good things came my way. And it became clear that it was the career that ticked all of my boxes, that it had the exciting problems to solve, it had the intellectual challenge, it had that real world relevance where you felt that you were actually making a difference. Remote working is very normal in tech, even before the pandemic. It really wasn't a big deal for people to be working from home some of the time. And that is obviously a really big deal. Tech pays well. And the other thing about having children is that they're ruinously expensive. And I've been through a period of my life where my husband has been the major earner, and I've had less pressure on earning, which is obviously good with children. But it doesn't sit easy with me not being able to step up to support the family, to have us like trapped in those roles where he can't take any of the pressure off from him, and equally I can't step back from the caring responsibilities. So yeah, being able to attract a good salary is also a helpful thing. So I mean, it was just win-win-win: good work, good conditions, good money. Okay, so like I said, I had this personal motivation of watching my daughter interact with software and saying, actually, this could be better than this. I wonder how well I could do. So I bought myself a laptop for Christmas and then sat there on January the 1st with that what now mindset. And my first point was a free computer science video course from Stanford University. I think it's called CS193. It gets updated periodically, so I think it's still a quality resource. And it started me off quite well on the theoretical fundamentals, but I was still hitting roadblocks when I came to actually making things. It sounded wonderful in the lecture, but I needed something more practical. And then I went to Udemy and I enrolled on the Angela Yu course at Udemy. So this is a paid for course, but it's very cheap. So if you get it in the sales, I think I paid like £20 for 80 hours of content. And 80 hours is obviously more than 80 hours because you watch each lecture more than once. So, you know, the value was very good there. And that course was great for being very practical about the tools. So it was like download this tool and download this little piece of like helper software. And then, you know, here's your sample project. And this is how you go on to, you know, open weather API and get the key and all of that detail stuff that actually puts you in a position to be making stuff. And at that point, my confidence was built up to the fact that I could do something. I came across a group called Mums Can Code, and in the end, that ended up evolving into being a boot camp of its own. But that wasn't the part that I was involved in. I was involved in the peer support part of it. And that, I guess, was my first entry into sitting on a Zoom call with other women who happen to be coders and talking it through. And the highlight of my time with them was leading a team at a virtual hackathon that they did, which was a weekend that we all punched out of our diaries and, you know, hacked. And that really opened my eyes to what was actually involved in making a tech project. So I'd walked in quite naively thinking that the challenge was going to be to learn to code. And what very quickly opened up to me is that there's this whole range of skills that goes into it, into the UX, into the design, into all that thinking and the collaboration and the brainstorming and the project management that's all involved in tech. And I think that hackathon working with the group of women on a project, it was good fun, but it also matured my understanding as to, you know, what is it to be in tech. I got the hackathon bug. I did some in-person hackathons. I think it was also a female-focused hackathon. It was called Founders something. It was a London place. I think it was called Future Founders in London. And then I came across an advert for the Apple Entrepreneur Camp, which is a program which invites people from underrepresented. It invites founders from underrepresented communities to spend some time in Cupertino. So I was in the second cohort. So at that time, it was specifically targeted towards women. And the idea was that you went for 2 weeks to Cupertino and you got code level support and that direct mentoring to help you make a go of your startup. So by this point, my hook of, I wonder if I can do better than this, had actually crystallized into setting up my own startup, which I called Salt for My Squid, which is what I pitched to Apple, very much focused around making delightful lifestyle apps for autistic kids. And that was obviously something that Apple found appealing. Most of the people there, they were at a much more advanced stage than me in their company journey. And that was tremendously inspiring. Again, it completely leveled up my aspirations and my understanding of what could be achieved from like a year previous to that. I wonder if I can get this to compile, to look at these guys with a dozen people in New York City running this fabulous company. It really opened up the horizons for me. And it was an amazing experience. So I had the 2 weeks in Cupertino at the camp. Then the prize included a week at the Worldwide Developer Conference, where again, I got to reconnect with the people that I'd met at the camp. And then it's carried on as a network where we stay in touch and we chat. It is inspiring to see other people's journeys, and it anchors you in understanding more clearly what you're trying to do, and also normalizing the things that you struggle with. And when I look back, I'm not sure why the word women's comes up as a pattern through this, because most of my career I've worked in women minority places, and I wouldn't say it's something that bothers me. But I guess there's something about it that's like an invitation. I guess it's something about that you know it's you that they're looking for, and you're not going to be kind of bending yourself into a pretzel or feeling slightly awkward. Um, and when I look back, I wonder why I didn't go to a hackathon before I came across one that was branded as a women's hackathon, but I didn't. I turned up to the one that I felt invited to. I have to mention another one, which is my current squad of ladies. It's called Ladies of Code London. And it was something I came across during the pandemic. And what it normally is, it's a London meetup group. And during the pandemic, they went online. And I was at a little bit of a dip where I was feeling a little bit isolated in terms of not having people to bounce code with. And so I just turned up. And it's the club is called Get On With It. And the idea is that you bring your side project to it. It's on a Sunday afternoon. You turn up at 4 o'clock. You set your intention, what you're going to do. You have a tea break after an hour and a half, where you tell people how you've done, and then you have a closing checkout. And so it's like 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon where you get on with it. And it's, I mean, again, I don't know why I need to be told to get on with it, but there is a certain power of accountability and community to having those faces looking back at you, especially with that weekly rhythm. So I've slightly fallen out of that rhythm now that I'm working at Marks and Spencer's, because my Sundays, I'm not coding my Sundays. I'm going getting some sunshine on my face. But for a while it was great, because you would see people's projects progressing, and people had their own personal ambitions and their own personal blockers. And we just have that little soft check-in, how are you doing? What are you going to do? How did it go? And there's a power in that. I don't understand why, but there is a power in having a screen full of faces. I knew somebody who worked at M&S, and I guess you could say that he was a bit of a mentor, in that he pair programmed with me, and had been quite a big support in just raising my level as a software developer in the context of working on my own projects. And then we got talking about future aims and frustrations and blockers, and I got to saying that I was in a way starting to reach the limit of what I could learn from YouTube and Udemy and all the rest. And much as I'm an independent person, it was also starting to get a little bit stale working on my own a lot, and how it would actually be refreshing to spend time on other people's projects and to learn from watching. And the other frustration is that I was very passionate about my market, which made me very reluctant to monetize it, which I could see was going to paste me into a corner, that all the joy I had in building, I still had to have a plan for keeping the lights on, which got talking with this guy about, what would a good job look for me. And I do have children. I have quite a lot of children. And much as we might be modern about it and say that everybody can do everything, they take up a lot of time, and they make a lot of regular and irregular demands. For the I had worked with the children, but for the previous years before that, I had really prioritized being very flexible, and I just couldn't see how I would be able to go into a full-time job without it being a horribly painful adjustment for both me and my kids. And that was my primary block, that I was just like, I'm not sure I can make this work. And there was that confidence angle, that I'd never had a job in development before. I'd never even intended to go for a job in development. I just wanted to build things. I didn't have like a lot of peers or like an education in this. So like when I read down the job specs, it was hard to see whether I'd fit or not. And so we basically, this idea sat between us, and then at a certain point after a few months, he came back to me and he said that he was working on a contract at a place with a fantastic corporate culture. And he said that he wouldn't say so if it wasn't, but that he'd worked in a lot of places, and this place had an exceptionally good corporate culture in that there was a genuine commitment to well-being. There was a genuine investment in the people. And he said, I'd be surprised when I heard the name, but that I had to take his word for it, that there was that commitment to really making good technology, really pushing the boundaries of the cutting edge stuff and trying to do things well, while you still had those roots of being a really well-established high street name, which was Marks and Spencer's, obviously. So he said, you'll be surprised when you hear what it is, but it's actually a really good place to be a developer. So I mean, I guess when you look at tech jobs, you have that whole startup culture, and I'm not sure that's for me. You know, all of the work all the hours that you can sell, work all the hours that you can find in return for equity, and big founder personalities, no HR department. That kind of thing looks great on a Netflix special. I don't think it feels that great when you're living inside it as an adult. So I was looking for a job that was had proper structures and corporate accountability around it, a job that would look after me and that I could be proud to be part of. But I also wanted to make great technology, and I wanted to balance it with my family. So basically I said, can I have the moon on a stick, please? And it worked out. So I'm a developer, and I come in as a junior developer because it's obviously my first role. So my job is mainly coding. So when I look at more senior people than me, they have more like meetings and stuff, which I think my job is better, to be honest, with more time with the code. So at 9:30 in the morning, we have a stand-up with the team, which is 15 minutes. If I take a step back, the work is organized in squads. So I'm an iOS engineer, and there are obviously many other iOS engineers, but my direct team has 2 other iOS engineers, 3 Android engineers, 2 backend engineers, a designer, a quality assurance guy, a product owner, a delivery lead. So it's all the specialisms mixed together behind one part of the product. And so every morning we meet for 15 minutes at 9:30 and we discuss. We have a Jira board with tickets, which is where our work is listed. And we discuss what we're working on, anything that we've put into code review for the other engineers to check over, anything that quality assurance might have picked up on previous work, and we just regroup. In my dream world, I try to block the next 2 hours for coding because that's the best time of the day. Although, of course, meetings come up, you get departmental meetings, you get maybe individual checkups. And then we stay connected as a squad as well. So there are various levels of, like, the 3 iOS engineers. We will get together once a week and talk through any problems. And then sometimes the larger group will get together. Several times a year we have hackathons, which I love. So hackathons just so much appeal to my mad inventor side of, let's make something cool and let's not worry too much about the process and the admin around it. So that's kind of like the coming out to play times. There's I think the culture is that the engineers do have a voice when it comes to things like UX, for example. Um, so so sometimes you get pulled into those bigger conversations about, you know, where's the product going. Um, and sometimes you just have random days like Christmas parties with Percy Pig. I think there are lots of payoffs to big corp, and I think the random parties is one of them. Or you know, or somebody being invited in to speak into the office, and then we can go and listen. So it's varied, but with a certain backbone that's very anchored into what's your product, what does your product need to be the best that it can be, where are you as an individual, what support do you need to be the best that you can be, and also, you know, let's keep everybody happy. So there are threads. Um, I mean, the part-time contract, like I've said, it's absolutely magic because when I've been going through this demanding time with my daughter, all that I do is I just schedule all of the meetings on one of my off days, and I don't get into that horrible working mum trap that I feel like I'm constantly failing and apologizing at work, and I'm constantly failing and apologizing at home. It lets me time block and just chill a little bit. Um, when I first joined, the other two engineers on my team who've changed now, they were actually contractors rather than employees. But I think they were, I mean, they were part of the corporate culture, and they coached me quite hard on not popping up on my off days and on keeping really clear boundaries and not getting into that mindset where I felt the pressure to overwork. And you know, they were almost quite forceful with me. Like if I'd pop up on my off days, they'd be like, and the way that they said it is that it was fairer to everybody if I kept my boundaries clear. And you know, if I was if I was working 5 days a week on the sly, then it's almost like making it awkward for everyone else. And they told me that, you know, you have your 3 day contract. This is what it is. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to do extra. You don't need to, you know, you're just fine. And I think I needed that to be said to me, especially at the start, where you know the imposter syndrome flies high, and you know you are taking too long over everything because you're new, and it's very tempting to say, you know, oh, I'll just flip up the laptop after the kids have gone to bed. But that actually wears at you, and that actually reduces your productivity as a coder. So it is mental work as a coder, and you do need your head in a certain state. And when you get very exhausted, it's not great because then you start making mistakes or you don't see things as clearly as you should. Um, and so I can see how I could have had a danger of trying to be the superstar, but actually hit burnout. And I'm glad that someone actually sat me down and said, when you're at the end of your working day, just go, just, you know, rest, do your kids, whatever it is you want to do, and then come back the next day. The other thing is that there is zero drama about working from home. And when I say zero, I mean less than zero. I mean, there are people in the team that I basically never see face to face, and that's fine. Um, so I had my first kid when I was 23, and right now, so that was she's 18 now. My eldest is 18. And back then, working from home was wild. You'd have like layers and layers of approvals to get even 1 day working from home, and it was very much a mum track thing. So you know, you could see that the gentleman would be getting on with things in their side chats around the meetings, and you'd be on the mum track just doing the grunt work that had no glory. And um, I mean, you don't wish for the pandemic, and the pandemic has made a lot of damaging changes, but it's also meant that it's normalized flexibility because everybody's had to be flexible. And you want to say that gender doesn't matter, But when men are routinely working from home, it stops being something that you do because you're a mum. It becomes just a different way of working, and you don't feel like you're going to be trapped in that. Um, and I don't know if you have kids, but I, it it just takes so much pressure off that when they wake up and they're running a fever, that then you say, I'll call in school, let me put a blanket on the sofa, and you know where the fridge is if you're hungry, and then you flip up your laptop and you carry on, and that's it. And when I was doing this with my first kid, I mean, I remember when she got chicken pox, she was sent home from school from chicken pox, and I was like, driving down breakneck speed to my mum's house, and mum, can you look after her, because I just can't take this much time off school, and with chicken pox you can't get any even emergency childcare. And boss, I'm going to drive as fast as I can, and I'll go take this day leave, and I'll try. And it was just, you do it, but it takes a penalty. And so we start out awesome, and we have like this much awesome, and if we spend this much of the awesome just getting our freaking selves in front of a laptop because we've got this just sudden unexpected barrier that there's a child that needs care, for example, then even if we started here, we've actually only got this left. And again, I wish it didn't exist. I wish I could say I'm bringing my whole self always, and I've always got 100% of myself to give. But we are limited resources, and the more energy we're spending on just making the very basic fundamentals of our life work, it does take a penalty on what's left. And the fact of there being zero drama about working from home means that's gone. If my kid is sick, if my kid is going to have like some kind of need to be dropped off at some crazy part of town at 5:30 p.m. for like this specialist thing that they've ever done that they really, mom, I really have to do, it's just no drama. It's fine. I do my work like I can structure my work how I need to. And so and like I said, technology is fundamentally flexible, so for everybody's communication and sanity collaboration, obviously I keep to office hours, but actually the sky doesn't fall in if I go to sports day between 2 and 3 p.m. and then work an extra hour at the end of the day. I mean, it doesn't even really need to be negotiated. I read that question differently on your thing, and I heard, what advice would you give to other women about a career and a family? And I actually asked somebody very inspirational that question when I was pregnant with my second, I think. And she was a chief operating officer at Barclays Group, Colette Delaney Smith, I think was her name. And she was also pregnant with her fourth, and obviously in a very senior position in a very large organization. And her advice, never come back to the same job after maternity leave, because she said it's never the same, and you've always had somebody that's been doing your job, and they're going to be, feel a little ruffled to be moved down, and you're going to feel a little ruffled if it's not the same. And it's just static. So I've taken that to heart, as you can see, and I've always used maternity leaves as a bit of a period to pivot and regroup. So I've not seen my objective to keep things the same. I've seen my objective as to grow and evolve and change. And I had my kids quite young, so I had my first when I was 23, which was younger than most of my peer group. But I think it's worked for me because it's put me into a mindset of my career growing with my children, rather than getting my career to a fixed point and then trying to sustain it across children. And the trap that I've seen with that is that you change, things change. A career that might have been fantastic for you before kids, it might just not work so well for you. And just things change, and it can feel like a failure. People can feel bad about change when actually that's the best thing, like letting your career grow with as your personal needs change, as your family needs change, as your professional interests change, keeping it fresh, reacting to the market, because portfolio careers are now more common. So that was a piece of advice that I had, and I've taken it to heart. I think one quite hard thing about working as a mum, I think, is having a support network, because again, the hours in the day, you've had your hours mumming and you've had your hours working, and you've maybe spoken to your spouse, and you start to run out of hours in the day to maintain your female friendships at the same time as they're people who have your back. And again, it's those things that help you with your resilience. So not the things that work for you on your best day, but the things that work for you on your worst day. And having a support network, having a village. That saying that they have, that it takes a village to raise a child. I think if you can find a village, if you can find people that you feel love your kids not as much as you do, but that do love your kids, then it's not that you're leaving them, it's that you're giving them time with their village. And I mean, it's a privilege if you can find that, and it's actually quite hard to do because, time, life. But that makes everything feel better and feel more human. So I mean, it's tough. I mean, I can't sugarcoat that it's tough. And I'm at the easiest part of this now because my youngest is 7 and my oldest is 18. But those nursery years, the expense of it, the craziness of it, the like running out of the office at 5 p.m. because at 6 p.m. the nursery's closing. You pick up your kid, they're exhausted and overstimulated from the day, so they're kicking off, and you were hoping to see them, and all you get is tantrums. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's tough, but just giving yourself the space to grow into it, and like a little bit of flexibility and support to give yourself the stamina, I think is it.